And we are live.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Legislative Review Committee today on Thursday, September 4th. Sorry for the public who may be delayed. We were just waiting for quorum, which we now have. And so we will get going with our agenda. First, we have approval of the Thursday, August 7th minutes. And do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye, okay, we got that. And then let's move on to our, we have some public input here before we move on to this, and we do have a member of the public here. And so I'm gonna give, Mr.
Olivia.
A chance to speak here, and if we have 3 minutes here, so, we wanted, as I've talked to you, we talked before, we wanna make sure that we, get as much done today as we can, but we welcome your words.
Do I need to say?
No, you don't need to say.
So I'm here, a resident of District 1, and I feel pretty confident in saying that I probably can also represent other people in our district, not just myself, who have filed multiple complaints on the noise coming from the fairgrounds, which just overhearing the pre-meeting conversations and also having listened to all the previous LRT meetings. I know that obviously that's the primary or big thing on the agenda, but I just want to basically convey our sense of overwhelming frustration in our district because this is obviously not something that just happened. This has been dragging on for several years now. But it is escalating and it is getting worse. I live about 4 miles away from the fairgrounds. And if you drew a straight line, 7 miles if you drive. I have a basement of cinder block and brick that I can hear the words to that music in my basement, 4 miles. And I have had many conversations with Patrick, our district commissioner, and I know he is even experiencing worse effects because he lives 1 mile away. I have had multiple conversations with Chief Salters, Captain Bird, and then we have a representative from the police department. And, my utmost respect for our law enforcement, by the way. By no means is this a negative reflection. But we feel that we being our district, that this, whether it be commission, the vagueness of our ordinance, the lack of enforcement, wherever that comes from, has let us down. And after having reviewed the ordinances myself with Chief Salters and looking at all the different facets there, we're even more frustrated because we don't understand why this is continuing to be an issue. And I understand there are bigger fish to fry in the sea. Case being with the incident that was taken care of by a joint task force just a few days ago. This should not be that big of a deal, but it is because our rights as residents are not being protected. And that's what we feel. That's why we're so frustrated. So I know that the whole purpose of this LRC, or at least one purpose, I won't say the whole purpose, is to address this issue. But we implore you guys, please make a decision today. And if at all possible, to please try to get this in front of the commission for a vote on Tuesday, which I know is fast tracking it. And it's ultimately up to the mayor. But I'm imploring you on behalf of District 1 and probably other residences outside of District 1. But I know District 1 because I've also reviewed the number of complaints with Chief Salters on each night of the events that have been going on. And they're pretty, y'all have seen the report.
Yeah.
They're pretty impressive. So please, please leave something out of us.
Thank you so much. You're a little over the 3 minutes, so I want to slow, that's okay. We want to make sure we get as much done today as possible since we're already short, but,
Thank you.
and we've already spoken before, so, and as I, thank you for your comments. They're well heard. As I spoke to you earlier, we don't make the, agenda up. We have talked to the mayor about whether or not we can get anything on to the agendas at a special session at the agenda setting. And if we are able to get through something today, that is a very strong possibility. I don't know if logistically that's possible from the administrative side of work staff side of getting things by the work session. So that's not my call, and I think that it's going to be a little stretch to have that done. So I just wanted to respond to you on that. But anyway, let's get to the agenda here. And I'm going to pass it over to Assistant Manager Ilga McCall. Thank you. And yeah, I should be ready after all this time here. And so we're going to pass it over to you, and let's get moving.
All right, just a quick reminder of the current charge of the LRC for this commission identified item of interest, which was assigned to the Legislative Review Committee by Mayor Gertz on September 3rd of 2024. So the charge is review the existing noise ordinance and discuss prospective updates, particularly in the agricultural residential zone related to non-agricultural sounds, as well as in the commercial downtown district relative to amplified noise. The committee may wish to seek a different measure of noise using objective measures of volume, for example. So first off, Harrison Daniel from ACC PD will share a little bit of data which you guys have in front of you and is currently on the screen.
Well, so I guess what we were asked to deliver was specific calls. We went back for a 24-month period. Any noise complaints relative to specifically the fairgrounds, that was the first thing. And then the second thing was the top 10 offenders, I guess, if we would say by address, over the past 24 months is what we looked at as well. So you can see the number of complaints by specific address over the last 24 months. So on page 1, you'll see the breakdown of calls or complaints of noise coming from or in reference to the fairgrounds, and you'll see the address of origin. If we were able to determine the address of origin, there's a couple in there that say NA because we weren't necessarily able to determine the address of origin for that specific call. And then you've got a little bit of data behind that, which is the date, the time of day, and then we had to measure the approximate distance that the call came from the fairgrounds. So if the call you see space 1, the call came from 257, Falling Shoals, then it's 2.5 miles away from the fairgrounds entrance. So that's the data. And then you can see the last column is disposition as completed by the officer or officers that were dispatched to those calls. That's page 1. Any questions specifically on that?
I'm just going to go ahead and ask, could you explain unfounded?
So the disposition status of unfounded, what that means is the incident didn't violate a crime or wasn't occurring or something to that effect. Essentially, if somebody says this occurred, then unfounded means, well, it's not a violation of the law, or it's not actually happening at that time.
Okay, so it could be either one of those that.
Right, yeah, it's not a exactly precise definition, but generally one of those two is going to be what it's referring to.
So theoretically, if we had an ordinance that did apply, there would be a follow-up on here that might be, if that was the reason, if there wasn't an ordinance that applied, then if we change that and there is an ordinance that applies, it wouldn't say unfounded, assuming there was some voice heard.
Right, so if, for example, if the officer issued a warning, then it would be a different status. You can see someone might be a verbal warning on here, that would be a status. If they issued a citation, if they took a report, those are all disposition statuses that we use. assignment complete, is something where there's, they've completed whatever assignment they've been given, and then they've gone back and service. They didn't take a report or issue a warning or anything to that effect. So there's just a few examples.
And what define for me the NA, not applicable? What would be an example of that versus unfounded?
Yeah, so that, I'm not actually sure why that's a disposition on that specific one, if that's what you're referring to, is line 27.
Yeah, so
Right.
that would, you would probably say that was just somebody's
There may
fill
be,
in for unfounded.
there may be a keying error on that. Those things do happen from time to time.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Shall we go on to the next then?
Sure. I think we should start with this. So we've just gone through,
Oh, did
some
you
of the
want to
data on.
There's page 2, if y'all want to look at that, you're asked to provide.
That's not relevant to the fairgrounds, that's just in general information, is
That's
that right?
correct. And so you can exclude the fairgrounds from the specific top 10. But what this is telling you is you've got the address that the complaint was about. So, row 1 is an address on Sycamore Drive. And you can see there have been 5 complaints. Row 2 is an address on Old Hole, a specific apartment. There have been 4 complaints on that one. And so you can see the top 10 addresses where we have noise complaints over the last 24 months.
And then this chart down at the bottom actually applies to the information on the front.
Correct. The chart at the bottom just gives you a few averages and breakdown for data related to the fairgrounds. So the average time of complaint, based on our data, is 5:44 in the afternoon. However, the times range from 3:30 PM till after 1 AM. For complaints, the average distance, if you measure each address on the earlier page, is 2.08 miles. The shortest distance is less than 1/10 of a mile, and then the furthest is just under 5 miles with the residence where the complaint originated, specific to the fairgrounds.
Oh, that's Jill Carey Road. Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Harrison?
I didn't hear, was there, I didn't.
No, you were just asking about quite more questions.
Oh.
Anyone else had any more questions for you? Next, I wonder if the attorney's office can share with us, current noise ordinance violation penalties. Kind of outline that for us.
Yes, and so there is a general penalty provided in the ordinance. It's section 1-1-5. That provision essentially says that unless the ordinance provides otherwise, the penalty is up to a $1,000 fine for each violation, or up to 6 months in jail, or a combination thereof. And so with respect to the noise ordinance and its violations, those are punishable under this section: $1,000 fine, 6 months in jail, or a combination thereof. Okay. And I know there was also a question at the last meeting about the maximum penalties under state law. And so we did look into that. There are provisions under the Title 15 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated that put limits on municipal ordinance violations and county ordinance violations. And that limit, believe it or not, is exactly what's in our ordinance: $1,000
Yeah.
fine, 6 months in jail, or a combination thereof.
Dang, on it.
We're on-
We're
we are
there.
in compliance with
Yeah.
state.
We can mark
Yeah,
that one.
the last time that was adjusted was Commissioner Thornton.
I was just, since, Commissioner, Davenport is not here today, and we got this update. So I think the thing that he expressed, was, or there was a miscommunication about the citations that, in other words, correct me, I think he said that the police officers were not giving citations to complaints from the fairground. I think that's what he said.
That was true because the ordinance only allows it in single family residence. And so that's why I think we're talking about changing the distance
Okay.
to where it actually is where they're single family related in the AR. And I'm glad this got separated out, because when I was talking about having a distance change chair and its relevance to the downtown area, they're really completely different. So I'm glad that this is coming forward specifically AR, so it didn't muddy that up. And I appreciate the average distance over here as a
Yeah.
potential fill in the blank. for that
But
business.
I would point out, and maybe this was actually, thank you for reminding us of that, Commissioner Thornton as well, that if I look at these top ones, Falling Shoals, Timber Ridge, Idlewood, Brickleberry and Homestead, I believe those are, SR zoned. So there would be a ordinance that did apply because they were single family, is that correct?
Mhm.
Right, so I don't know why, I mean. So having the enforcement part is going to be important as well, but what we can address now, I think you're going towards it, is making sure that we have an ordinance that applies in the agricultural zone as well.
That's correct, specifically for commercial entities in the AR zone.
Okay.
Because to your point, Commissioner Thornton, the noise ordinance does not apply to commercial entities that produce noise in the
Oh,
normal course of
That
business.
would be the fairground.
Yes. And
Gotcha.
for the text amendment that we're gonna look at in a few moments.
Gotcha,
would, Address that.
gotcha.
Was that a segue?
Well, yeah, thank you.
So you should have in front of you a draft text amendment.
Okay,
The area shaded in gray is what would be the new text. And so we're gonna walk through that, but I would be remiss if I didn't, as your attorney, remind everyone that what we're talking about is constitutionally protected speech. I actually brought the case that evaluated our noise ordinance in 2011. And the Supreme Court clearly stated that the code section that we're talking about changing, it does regulate protected speech because mechanical devices such as amplifiers, speakers, and televisions, they all produce not just random noise, but music and words that qualify for protection as speech. So that is very significant for a couple of reasons. That means that any amendment to the noise ordinance needs to be able to pass muster under the federal constitution as well as the state constitution. And I'll go ahead and tell you, the First Amendment to the state constitution is a lot stricter than the federal constitution. So for today's purposes, I want to focus on the state test because if it passes the state test, it's very likely that it'll pass the federal test. And so under the state test, you have kind of three parts. The ordinance has to be the least restrictive means of achieving the government's significant interest, and in this case, the significant interest, which was talked about in the Grady case, is protecting citizens from unwanted noise. Like the courts have recognized that governments do have a significant interest in that. So I think we have that problem, right? So it has to be the least restrictive means of achieving that government interest that also leaves open ample alternatives for expression. Okay. So we're going to talk about that test as it applies to the text amendment. And obviously we're talking about noises in the AR zone. So that's what this text amendment focuses on. We can certainly, if the will of this body is to expand that to other zones, we can certainly draft other amendments. And as I said earlier, the noise ordinance does not apply to commercial entities. And so the text amendment creates essentially like an exemption for commercial entities located near AR zones. And this mirrors the existing exception that Commissioner Wright was talking about. There already is an exception for commercial entities located near single-family residential zones. But as the current ordinance is written, that would not apply to AR zones or the fairgrounds. And so what this text amendment does, I encourage you to look at it. It's almost an identical copy of what's in the previous exemption in section C8. Which is not. Yes, I decided not to print out all that paper because
Well, thank you.
on the text amendment.
C8, which
And
applies
plus we
to
have it
single
here.
family.
If you scroll up there to section 8,
Yeah.
subsections down.
Sorry.
You're fine. Commercial entities, single family residential zone districts. That is currently on the books and it's currently being enforced.
Okay.
But there is no similar exception for the AR zone. This text amendment would create an exception.
So it's a mirror of that for the AR zone.
Correct. Now what I need.
If you just change, I'm just making sure I understand.
Mhm.
So if you just change that heading where it says 8, and added AR or whatever, that would be the same.
That's it.
exact-
That's-
Correct.
That's why he didn't.
But,
I'm adding a wrinkle to it, because what I need from this body is a recommendation on the distance. Because it's really a policy decision that the attorney's office doesn't make, the manager's office doesn't make.
Okay.
So what I can tell you is, the concern I have with using the existing 300 feet and 100 feet requirements is that as it applies to the fairgrounds, that will most likely result in a scenario where we're basically saying, fairgrounds, you cannot have any amplified sound at your events. And because we're talking about First Amendment speech, that is most likely to get struck down as unconstitutional, because we're saying you cannot engage in your First Amendment right to engage in.
So the distance is
So the
going to
distance is
help
gonna-
us relate to the least restrictive
Correct.
and not be,
And-
not pick the least restrictive. And which is where these numbers are gonna help us.
Yes. And so, as we stated in previous meetings, I think, the attorney's office would advise, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 feet is sort of our starting point for discussion. And I can tell you that I think the further that distance is, the more defensible the ordinance is.
And 1,000 is about a quarter of a.
Sarah, can you translate that?
I'm
for us? I don't math. That's why I went to law school. So-
I was about to do it without even asking.
Well, you're looking it up. Why does that not apply, that concern not apply in section 8, where you can have the 300 feet and the 100? Like, isn't that, is
No.
that same concern about freedom of speech?
No, that's fair. And what I'd say is that section was reviewed by the Supreme Court and they upheld it as a reasonable, content neutral time, place and manner restriction. So the
Okay.
courts already said that that section passes constitutional muster.
Okay,
The concern I have with applying it to the fairgrounds is if we take those same distances, we're basically going to be saying you cannot have any amplified sound. And that is most likely going to result in a legal challenge, and I don't know that we'll have a viable defense.
So we want new math based on some of these examples
Right.
of how close it's heard and how far away it's heard. And so that we're making a fair judgment of the issues and the complaints.
Yes,
and we have the one at Dunlap that is 44 miles, but then there was the other one that was a little less than that.
But here on the back is the averages.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
That's the
Yeah, so-
summation there.
yeah, the cruise distance, yeah.
500 feet, for context, is equivalent to 0.095 miles. 1,000 feet is 0.189 miles.
0. What is 1,000?
0.189 miles. So I'm looking at this, it looks like Joe Carey Road would not fly under that.
0.07,
Yeah, I think that's the only one. I can do.
So, and then if we were to sort of follow the A and B, the first one being the further distance and then B being the shorter distance to give us the range.
correct. And the idea would be is during the day, it'd be the longer distance. During quiet hours, it's a shorter distance because you don't want to be able to hear the noise.
Right, and then, are we still just on your first thing of the three you were gonna list to talk about?
No, I mean, I think it does.
That's all we got. The least restricted is getting us to the math.
Well,
yeah.
I think more is that it doesn't leave an alternative opportunity for expression on the fairgrounds part. So I think the concern is that a smaller zone effectively ends operations at the fairgrounds and there's no alternative
Right.
for communication
Right.
for speech under those conditions.
Similar to, again, why we're doing these in two different waves is mechanical devices out there would shut it down if we were to ban that. We're talking about not having amplified on our streets is a different
Sure,
thing.
sure. I think that's fair.
So do we have any suggestions here among our committee on what those numbers should be?
Could we start with, what if we started with 2 miles being the longer call distance and 1 mile or shorter being the
That's it, I mean,
other?
so that means that if you're within those, like if you're a half mile, you can't,
Well, I don't want to say that's an acceptable loud noise, but there's a point to where we can't
Well, I think if you look
be
at,
restrictive.
I think that what did you just say? Tell me again.
I just said 1 mile, but maybe,
It probably needs to be,
I think it needs to be shorter than
a
that. I
half,
think
a
it's
half mile.
a half mile or
Yeah.
maybe a quarter of a mile or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then
And then 2
then the
miles,
longer out.
right?
Yeah.
And so my thought, one, to how long we've been talking about this, and this committee is half of the commission. I was hoping that we could not completely belabor the math, but fill in some math, send it out of committee so that the full commission, because I bet this is gonna take a couple rounds with the full commission to get up to speed, like how long it has been for us.
it could, although the mayor, there's been a request from the commissioner, district commissioner to, fast track it, and the mayor has responded to that he is willing to put it on the agenda for our agenda setting meeting. So, but I mean, that could also be held if it wasn't, there. So I think, and also could be adjusted. So if the,
Yeah.
someone could vote, right, so.
So I think that if we use our education to get this out of committee,
Yes,
then we can gain more insights.
and share this information
Mhm.
here with the district commissioner and such, and then
Well,
if there's an
and-
adjustment that needs to be made.
Well, that would happen on the agenda. That's
Right,
why
right,
getting it on
right,
the
right,
agenda
right,
would
right.
allow it to be publicly discussed.
You don't mean a year, because it's been here for like a couple of months, so you didn't mean a couple of months for the larger
I
commission.
just want to back,
Well, I
well,
just, well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just want to back and, clearly Commissioner Wright's brain works much faster than mine. As far as processing. What was your recommendation on the minimum and maximum mile?
I was saying, why don't we start with half a mile for the minimum, which is B. And then the other would be 2 miles.
I'd say one.
So A is day and B is night, correct? If we.
Did you say 1?
And then, so I'm just trying to get it,
So just
Trying to get it right.
converting like a half mile for reference is 2,641 feet, which is just a little shorter than 3 football fields. So just sort of thinking like, how far is that really when you sort of think out loud?
and it's the property line. It's not necessarily where the speakers are.
That's correct.
I like the, half and the 2. That's where I'm at, but I could do
The
1.
half mile is the minimum.
Yeah, exactly what Allison had suggested. And only reason why I said 2, it just want to give us some wiggle room if push came to shove.
For more discussion.
Yeah, so, that's my thought, but I could do 1, not tied to it.
Stephanie, what do you think?
0.25 to 1,
1 to 1.
Okay.
as short as 0.25.
You want to make a motion?
0.25 half miles.
Is that what you said?
That's what I said earlier, but, and what did you say? That a half mile is the 3 football fields. I'd be
A quarter mile is it's 1,320 feet, which is, when you divide it, it's about 1.5 football fields.
that's pretty short.
That would be a quarter of a mile.
Is that short?
I go the half mile and the mile, and then
I can do
there
half.
needs, let's do the half mile.
So I make a motion that we take this gray area of the ordinance that has come so thoroughly studied from our attorneys office. And have in A, 1 mile. And in B, half a mile.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that we move this out of committee and get the mayor, let's move it out of committee.
Okay. I was better vote on this first.
No, that's what we're voting on.
Okay,
We're voting on this, so, because once
Move
we
that.
vote on this, they
Okay.
can go to the committee.
Okay, I'm
So that's
good.
it.
And then
So
go
let's
out,
vote on it.
go to,
go ahead and make your motion.
and go to the full commission for discussion and public
Yes,
voting.
yes, as soon as the mayor deems to put it on the agenda.
I second it.
Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was just looking up some details compared Athens-Clarke County to other counties. Is ours 300 feet? 300 and 100. Okay. I compared Athens to other counties in Georgia, and so for example, Newton County is 75 feet, Gwinnett County is 50 feet. So there are counties that are considerably lower.
For the single family, for the SR?
Mhm.
Well, now all we're looking at is agriculture.
Just to-
This is ag.
Oh, this is just in the agricultural zone.
Well, I was looking at the code, so I'm, being new, maybe I would like someone to clarify it, because there are some residential and agricultural, right?
Yeah, this is for agriculture.
But it's in,
It's all
it's in,
residential
it's in.
properties.
There's residential properties and
Yeah,
agriculture.
yeah. Yeah, but these are the ones that were, this would, all the people who are complaining are for the most part included in this, except for the one that's very short. And I think this gives it, by moving it out of committee, Commissioner Davenport, who is most familiar with the situation in the area, he will have the opportunity to make an adjustment. I mean, if there was a need for adjustment, he could make a CDO that just changed those numbers, and that would be just, he could convince us, right?
And I would also think that this list, although it's great data that we asked for, I would think that, from what we're hearing is that the residents have, whether, I don't know, they're just burnt out from complaining because they haven't felt like it was useful. So I think that this is just a snapshot really of the angst, as our visitor has said, and stuff. I think that there's more to it, and that's what we've been hearing from Commissioner Davenport.
Well, it definitely clears up some information to me, because I was disturbed that fairgrounds folk were getting calls and no citations, so now it makes sense to me. So I don't think we should hold it up. I don't know if we just voted, I know the motion was
Do we
made.
look to
We haven't voted now.
Or just
So
a
let's,
discussion.
are we ready to vote? Yes, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
Second for the motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
Yeah, and any nays? No, okay, so the motion passes, and staff, if it's all right with the committee here, we'll move it to the mayor, back to the mayor to put on the agenda at his will. And hopefully it'll be on the agenda soon. I think it will be gone by the agenda, so yeah.
And I also wanted to say, when the agenda report gets put in there, even though it was assigned a year ago, that they
Yes.
typically do put in the agenda report which meetings we spoke about. So I'm not saying we've been talking about it for years, but I know that it's been on our docket for years. And
Yeah.
for the agenda report, even if it's title only for the agenda setting, that we can all share.
What?
I'm just giving leeway for staff to put it together.
Okay, I hope we can do this with a title, I really do, I think that's,
With more than a title.
with more than a title, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I totally get it, but it really confuses folks, it confuses me, I get in, oh, hell, this is what we're talking about. So, I really hope that staff, if you can make it happen, I would.
And it was just this week that they had the agenda setting meeting, so. we're
yes,
still
I
within
think
the
I had already brought it up to them, so they
Yeah.
already have some heads
Our
up.
goal is to have the full package ready for a potential Tuesday agenda setting, which is the 16th, is that right?
Maybe 19th.
September 16th or 19th, that Tuesday, vote at special call session, if that's amenable.
If possible, I appreciate, we would.
Instead of it just being an agenda item.
That's what Commissioner Davenport had requested.
That was not my motion. My motion was for it to be put on the agenda for vote in
Oh,
October.
yes,
So you want to vote in October, that's fine.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I was saying I didn't have to do no title.
I don't want any shortcuts.
I'm just saying that's the earliest we could have done it, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect, we're not voting
Yeah,
on
that's
anything tonight.
Sarah's been listening to District 1 Commissioner.
Oh,
Who's-
nope,
yeah.
that's the earliest we could have done it administratively, if that's, so by
Yeah.
shooting for the earliest date, that just
Yeah.
ensures that we're able to
Yeah.
administratively help with
And
whatever the.
And that gives the
Yeah.
community members the proper cycle.
yes.
Perfect.
Okay?
And now, the question, I want to move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be of the, what is it? Oh, the commercial district, especially because we have David Lynn here and the Downtown Association. But are we returning to do we have to return to the enforcement part of this as well? As a concern? So at this point, we know we can't we've made the ordinance. We know we cannot change the $1,000 fine. That might be something that we could mention to our state legislators, because I wonder when the last time it was changed, you know? And so do you feel that you've gotten, once this passes, it'll give you more, direction with the enforcement ability?
Certainly, but again, you know, with noise ordinance, or any, except for a few exceptions, any county ordinance, the only thing we can do the night of is issue a citation. So we can't make an arrest that night, even though that could be, you know, confinement may be the ultimate punishment, but that has to be decided in court by the judge or, you know, we can't do that pre-trial.
Can you give more than one citation in the evening? Or
Yes.
You can, if there's more, one, like if it's.
Well, we can continue issuing citations, I guess theoretically, as long as there's a continued violation.
Okay, and a continued complaint or arrest, okay,
That's correct.
thank you. All right, let's, move on to that next item. Who's directing?
Here's Alice.
Right, so now you wanna shift and
Yeah.
talk a bit about, amplification in the downtown district, which is the other part of the charge from the mayor.
So since this is our first time focused on that, would we want to get some similar data from, you know, related to, because I'm curious as to how many times a citation has actually been done, as well as, I don't know if,
Yeah, I need to know more about what the
Well,
problem is
that's-
myself.
we have an expert behind.
We have
Well,
an
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Wait,
Oh, that's
There's some data we've provided in the past.
Let me recognize Commissioner Thornton.
I tell you, her brain is much more faster than
Yeah.
mine. Yes, I would like to look at this data that somebody just pulled down. But since David Lynn is here, let's at least hear from him what the issue is. And then as that goes on, we can request whatever data as follow-up. But I think you're gonna be the expert right now.
Okay.
And
Come on up with
I would love to
that.
see you.
And of course, Allison, this is your district, downtown is your district.
This is from last month.
Oh, I forgot.
Okay.
I forgot this was Allison's district. She
Yeah,
got
yeah, so we
expert
got-
too.
That's right.
And David,
Probably more of an
David's good to hear.
My name's David Lynn. I'm co-director of the Athens Downtown Development Authority. And, part of our, responsibility is, taking input from merchants in the tax district and relating those to, the Mayor and Commission. As part of my morning walkarounds, I was, asked by a merchant on Washington Street, to take a look at the noise ordinance. He's, the owner of Clocked down there, the hamburger place down there. And he says, and after COVID, they had tripled their economic output by expanding into the private alley next to the shop, and that's been encouraged, for all the downtown folks. He says that I've witnessed that the neighbor next door, Plum Park, often plays really loud music. Not just at night, but in the daytime, even on Sunday mornings before everybody's getting ready for brunch. And, he's a musician himself and very live and let live. But he says it's getting to a point where it's actually so loud that it's driving his customers away. You know, you just can't sit out there. And, in a business neighborly way, he asked the folks next door to turn it down, and they just turned it up. So, you know, not very good manners or a good neighbor. And we have a concern, you know, with the upcoming Union Fair food truck area. And that's adjacent to, you know, the historic Morton Theater, that may even affect some performances there if they're, you know, amplifying their music in such a loud way. And then while I was talking to David, Barry Buck at 40 Watt Club came up and said there's clearly been some change, because it used to be she could have an act playing inside her establishment and police would come and make her turn it down. So, and I can, you know, I live in an in-town neighborhood. You can clearly hear some of the events at Paloma Park on our street. and the old iron factory was probably worse. So these are just concerns, and we estimate that there's about 7,000 people that live downtown now, so the downtown area is not just a commercial district, it's a significant residential district. So, I know these are kind of conflicts that we all expect from an urban area, but, we'd like, some solution if possible to just some good common sense business manners. Yeah, I was on the commission when we changed the ordinance, from the clunky sound decibel meters that officers carried in their vehicles in those days to the distance, thinking that would be easier to enforce. But, everyone can have a sound meter on their phones, and maybe that type of technology is easier to deploy now than, the distances, but that was just a suggestion.
David, do you have any, in your role,
Yeah.
present role, do you have any, examples of other communities and downtowns that address this situation?
No, that's a great question. I'm remiss for not getting that data together. I would assume that Athens is fairly unique, maybe similar to the college communities. And we'll have
Yeah.
to find some peer communities that way, because most downtowns, even successful ones, are typically all one thing or another. They're typically all commercial districts and people don't live close by, but we'll get some information together for you on that.
Is there anything that Commissioner?
Well, yeah, and
Right.
Davis was, highlighting it, and again, it's gonna be, that's private property noise coming out. And then some of the issues that I wanna make sure we address is the right of way and public spaces and amplified. Again, we don't wanna interfere with what's coming out of the sound. It's the volume, the decibels, the loudness of it. If, so that, there's the public right of way, we're gonna have a new park by the Costa Building, we're gonna have a new College Square makeover to be a really College Square. And, this is good time for us to, address the public spaces right away, and then the private. We've got the fraternity house is also, but as we learned in the last meeting, that's why they've got the new indoor building behind, so that the bands are within a structure and on the front lawn. But if we can learn about those three avenues or those three ways, one thing that occurs to me is that when we talk about not interfering with a commercial entity's livelihood, the example of the 40-watt is a music venue. That is their business. Paloma Park, I would say their business model is food and drink. So
I can assure you, the 40 Watt has invested heavily in soundproofing equipment, as most of our other nightclubs downtown have. Some of you can't even hear what's going on from the street. So it's not a really fair business practice if you allow essentially a nightclub to operate on the, in open air and not, a 40 Watt situation.
That's a good point. And one of the board members on the Downtown Development Authority is with Tweed, and he teaches the proper way to make sure when they're recording, they're not hearing a truck, siren or something outside. But I think that if we can learn legally how to decipher what the commercial entities objective is.
I mean, you manage light pollution and stormwater in ways where that can't emit beyond the property line. A property owner has to take care of his own stormwater, and a property owner can't have light pollution intruding on his neighbor. So
I'm wondering if too, we brought this up during my tenure here with the devices, the technical devices for measuring sound, and there were questions legally about it. But I'm wondering if the technology has advanced in any way over these last 4 or 5 years, if there have been any other cases where that, I think if I remember correctly, it was calibrating making sure the calibration was correct and it wasn't gonna get thrown out of court or something. Are there any new standards? Are there any new technology that's available and more trustworthy and, worthwhile legally?
I know Sandy Springs just reverted back to the sound meter approach. And they do have official meters, but they depend on, the individual officer to make a good judgment using a cell phone app. That's not gonna hold up in court.
Yeah.
That may be a justification to call in, well, we need to get the official sound meter here, make the determination. But
Commissioner Thornton?
Is it possible, to piggyback on your question about any update, equipment? Could we, I thought we did this when Russell was on the commission, but I may be wrong. But could we just pilot, a decimeter reader for a month or two to just see what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think we discussed that when we were talking about the tools.
Yeah, I mean, but could we do it as a pilot and that could tell us if we wanted to invest in something like that, how reliable it is. I do think that, ordinances from, similar size towns would be, I think there's a lot of, is it possible to do a test thing?
That's something else we can put on a list of things to.
We can study that, And on that point, when we studied it before,
Mhm.
it was, again, it was loud landscaping equipment, which that is their business. So their business is a noisy machine. So that fell under you can't put somebody out of business for their equipment. Again, and then the other one was, he wanted the committee at the time was talking about moving vehicles. Okay,
Right.
we're not
Yeah.
talking about a moving target here. So I think those were some of the limitations. So if we began to study it again with what you said and what David said, you start off with an app to know that you're in the right ballpark for how loud it is in the distance of it. And then it could then be followed up with that. I think that's worth us studying now that we're shifting gears.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. And I did not research this closely before the meeting because we were talking about the AR zone. So that's something we'll have to follow up with y'all. But I know this came up a couple of years ago in the LRC, and then Sherry Hines wrote a memo about the potentially moving to like a enforcement system using decibel meters. And I think the fundamental concern then and now is that whatever method we use would have to be able to withstand what's called the Dahlberg standards in court. I think currently, and Harrison, please chime in. Using the plainly audible standard allows us to bring cases a little bit more efficiently because an officer can come testify that the noise was plainly audible from a certain distance. When you start using specialized equipment, it just gets a little bit more complicated. And not to say we can't do that, but it's going to be harder to prove cases because an officer will probably still have to come testify, but we may need an expert to come testify. We have to prove that it's been calibrated and things like that. So
Similar to a breathalyzer like we've discussed.
And the radars.
And right now,
I guess I wasn't even going to the court yet, with anybody. I was thinking more of just data that if we, almost like, you put the speed thing that you run across and the number, and it calibrates, da.
You see it yourself.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, just to add to the information so I wasn't even thinking about using it as a,
the actual enforcement mechanism.
yeah, no, I wasn't looking at that.
Can you actually make a requirement that a business that, produces loud noise have some sort of, what do we call these things now?
Well, at this point, it's outdoor amplification.
Right, but I mean, they could
On
still
private
have,
property.
they could still be knowing how loud they would, is there any way to create a situation where you are requiring a business to self-monitor itself? The same way you have to have like fire extinguishers in there, or fire, I'm just throwing out things, just.
I think like when it comes to like fire extinguishers and things like that, I think there's some authority under state law for things like that and probably our own ordinance. Nothing comes to mind in terms of some authority that authorizes us to require a private entity to have.
How about a nice ask?
To monitor.
That's something we can look into.
I mean, I think that there is the concern, and I know we talked about it here, I mean, if we're talking about it, there's just so much noise in down, do you know what I mean? It's impossible to discern what noise is coming from your establishment as opposed to others, and I don't know how useful that would be necessarily.
Presumably it would pick up traffic and construction and
Everything.
everything else, so,
Yeah.
in addition to amplified sound, so I don't know.
Well,
That's a good point, Courtney.
and,
Well,
and,
person I did.
Okay.
In a previous meeting, I'm just stealing it.
well, and the
You
point,
already made this point. I'm
the
just-
point being is one business calls the other business to let them know it's too loud, and look what the response was. I'm not sure that
Right.
self-monitoring in that sort of non-neighborly way
No.
is gonna help. But, I do think that, we've got a good bit to study here, and it is different from what we just moved out of committee.
Commissioner Johnson?
Sorry. I remember one of my first or second meeting in discussing the noise ordinance. I brought up, there was a discussion about amplified sound. And so I wanted to just define this discussion for like Bluetooth, microphone and speakers. Like I think during that earlier meeting, that was the primary reason. And so now I'm hearing in this meeting, there may be concern for indoor spaces and the sound. So if we could clarify that. The second thing is I remember discussing in the earlier meeting that I used to visit Santa Monica a lot. And they have a growing, the ongoing culture of allowing people to play outdoors. There's literally a person waiting to be found at every single block. And I just did a chat GPT for a typical block in an urban area, established urban area, and that's 300 to 400 feet. The amplified sound, and I remember someone asking me to pull some data for Santa Monica just as a comparable, because I probably visited there 75 times in my life. And so I walked from one block to the next block. So I didn't hear the person I just listened to for 5 minutes, but I could hear this person. I don't hear anything else. I walk to the next block. I don't know if that's a volume, if that's a volume thing or a volume control, but it was just for that audience. I do know that they do not have any restrictions on amplified sound in Santa Monica, but there's no competition for sound. No competition for sound, based on human ear. You know what I mean by that? Like, I don't hear anyone else. If I'm standing in front of an artist, with an acoustic guitar, I don't hear the next person. If they're on
It's
the
not
side.
interfering, like,
Yes.
yeah,
And so I just wanted to share that.
right, because I remember you said you didn't want to stifle that kind of artistic expression.
Sure.
Yes.
It occurred to me another area that's unique with downtown is the special event permit. And making sure that the special event permit includes the speaker, because we know where it's gonna be, it includes a megaphone. And that I'd like us to look into with that amplified on the right of way, or making sure that you have a event permit to have a megaphone and amplification. Because we've had issues with an event not being able to be
Right.
heard, whether they're trying to get people to line up for a race or, just the different things that a special event. So special event, megaphone and speakers is a separate entity of its own, because they're already getting permission for other parts of the right of way, and want to make sure that we cover. So there's lots of unique scenarios in the
Yeah.
concentrated area.
David, I would also, if you think of more things,
Sure,
please,
I'll do our own research.
Yeah.
We got some time, so we'll
yeah.
go through this.
I should say that our intern, Caitlin, I don't know if you guys have heard, she did pull a few ordinances that I'm happy to share with the group from Milledgeville, Statesboro, other kind of college communities in Georgia. So she did great work on it. So I'll pass that along so you guys can review those as well.
Thank you.
It's great. Staff, do you need anything else from us at this point? Because we look like we have a lot to, look into.
So what is the takeaway?
The takeaway is, I think that the takeaway sounds like we are going to be, from my takeaway is that we're going to be hearing more about all of these issues and solutions that we have listed here. And then we will have to, maybe another takeaway for staff is there, you know, what kind of actions can we be taking to address any of these things
So I guess my point is, when you said all of these issues, and you probably.
that are
can
just
re-
listed, the ones that we've just been listing?
So that, and I guess that's what I was asking, I wanted to hear what they were, but, so. If I, it's correct, so one of the takeaways is that we're going to get information from other areas that have similar populations. And David Lynn and Miss Caitlin are going to be helping with that. And then the other thing, it was something else. Oh, who will look into if we can pilot a decimal
And
here?
that's hopefully they've taken all of these things. Maybe you could,
I just want to write them down for my own notes.
yeah,
that's all.
what have you all written down? You wonderful staff people who've been taking good notes.
I got a couple things.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
But if they're on my list, that means I'm like, red flag.
Oh,
See how we.
okay.
All right, disclosure. This is called the red flag list.
Okay.
No, it's not really, well, the decimal readers.
Okay.
The distinction, you talked about making a distinction between commercial entities, sort of kind of what their purpose is.
Yeah,
If that's a way to think about this,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily red flags, just, I've never heard that idea.
Yeah, because we can't do it if it's commercial, and Commissioner Johnson, that speaks to a music venue. That is their commercial entity. So
That's their
you
commercial
would not,
activity.
yeah, so you would not be trying to hamper when the door comes open for somebody to go in and the music rolls out. But a person whose commercial entity is food and beverage, blasting music.
Right, that, maybe that's, and then just general kind of right of way in public spaces issues. And I do want to just reiterate, our office a couple months ago provided just general, strongly advised, just not a blanket, ban on amplified noise generally. It has a lot of implications. It would need to be not just against targeted, sort of entities, but a very wide ban and even then, I'm not sure it would withstand the constitutional muster, but nonetheless, just that memo was recirculated last month. And so if you'll take a look at that, you'll see where it's coming from just generally on the amplified noise issue.
Okay, and time will also always be a factor, like the times these events or stuff are going on, that will always be a factor.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's part of what we're dealing with downtown, is it is full, the complaints are 24/7, potentially.
Yeah, and the example that David was giving of Palermo, what's the name of that place?
Palermo
Street,
Park,
so
Palermo.
where it's outside and then you have restaurants that are right next door and they're playing music like really, really loud. So you don't even want to sit there. So
Mhm.
whose purpose and interest is, should be protected there.
Well, and on that note, if there is the fact that we have a business district, if it allows that to have some rules that are a little bit different. I know that I have fielded complaints and people, and Berryman would always say, well, that's downtown. It has different rules. It doesn't have noise ordinance. But it seems like, I'm not sure that that's still current. I would like confirmation on the current status of how it could be different in non-enforcement. When I'm looking at thinking that the business district, because it is a business district, and as David pointed out, very residential now, that perhaps it can indeed have enforcement in these areas, and maybe even more for somebody having a megaphone when somebody's trying to have a business. I don't know.
Okay.
And, before, Commissioner Johnson, did you have another point?
I have a couple of things, to ask and just put out there. So the, former data that, Deputy Chief Daniels mentioned that he had already sent out, and someone sent it to me, the former data for the downtown area.
I'll do it today.
And then, so commercial versus residential. So I think it was at the August 19th meeting, and one of the commissioners commented to an applicant for a variance in a zoning issue. And their response was, you know where you bought your place. When you bought it, you know what was existing. You bought a house, if you bought an apartment over a bar. I mean, I guess I'm trying to say, us considering residential communities that live
Right.
downtown, that's a choice. And that was, I thought it was valid then, for not approving the variance, and I also agree with it now. But for the residential area, we did talk about the distance from downtown. So to Mr. Lynn's point about he lives close to downtown, or did
Yeah, I do.
and we didn't discuss the distance from downtown, from the commercial district. If we could add that to our evaluation.
So you guys are gonna do a great job, like summarizing all these notes of areas and perhaps, sending that out beforehand, but, and maybe compiling again all this wonderful legal, communications that have been on noise that are relevant. And I know that we could find them, but it'd be great to have them all in one,
Well,
attached to one email as we start this new one.
and also there's only 3 of us on LRC that were on the last time when Russell was the chair. So even those documents from back then are also relevant new reading material.
We'll pull those, for sure.
Well, you can look through and make sure.
Yeah, they're real-
I guess, but I suspect they were.
We talked about amplified sound, so yeah.
Did we ask for the amplified, what you've had to deal with in the police department? Are you getting us that data? I mean, are there?
Or
have you
is there?
is there data from you responding to downtown noise situations? Have there been complaints?
Yes, so yes, ma'am, so that's the report that I've got with me right now that I think is gonna be recirculated.
Okay.
I'll
great,
resend
great.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that would have been from this colorful one from
That's
last
the report.
meeting.
It's a 5.
Remember we talked about it for the SAE, and SAE was number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, because along with
Yeah.
the letters and that's when John spoke about the new building.
Right.
But, and then some of the addresses that were on today's handout were also South Village. And so but those are around single family. So that's also the thing, the residents here and many people who are single family dwellings are not in the zone of single family. Or they're close enough, but the zoning might be multifamily, even though it's a single family house.
That's exactly right.
So that's some of the other,
But the mayor's charge on this was for looking, we wanna, well, if we stray, we wanna be aware that we're straying, but was to be focusing on the commercial downtown district relative to amplified noise.
Yeah.
So,
I was just gonna say to your point, the 2 really main things, looking at this ordinance from my perspective, that we've been dealing with are, is it a commercial entity in the course of normal business, which is generally applicable, correct me if I'm wrong, across the
That's right.
entire county.
That's right.
Except for the single family residential. And so those are the 2 things. Is it a commercial entity or not? And then is it single family or not in terms of the zoning, not what's actually sitting on the piece of property?
Exactly.
And so I guess there would be some distinctions between downtown and what's on Millage Avenue. Because what's happening on Millage is very different than what's going on down here. And
Yeah.
most of that, those are not commercial entities in the course of business. There may be 1 or 2 others, exception.
understood. And I think that might be where some of this commercial entity comes into play, because you have, back to those 2 examples, you have 40 watt people are paying to come in and hear music. That's their commercial business. And I'm not sure that people are paying for as a matter of fact, people are hearing music they don't want to hear. And definitely aren't going to pay for, as the other example. So we might end up, and that's back on your red flag list to see how complicated that idea is.
That's right.
okay, great. Anything else, or can we wrap it up?
Looking for a date in October?
Oh, I was, the second, that's right, October the 2nd, which, And that is before then our next voting meeting. So
It should be fresh then,
yes, we should be fresh.
and it would be maybe even before the vote happens on our last item.
Oh,
Right,
this year
right.
is over with y'all.
I'm good with that date.
Okay.
Okay, October 2nd,
Yes.
we all have that in our,
We will send out,
Yeah.
hold it on your calendar, so
Will
your
do.
calendar official.
great.
Calendar
I'll even
official.
send it to you, Dave.
Calendar official.
You say that now. You thank me later.
So I'm there, yeah.
Motion to adjourn, are we there?
Yeah, we are there.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and